Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Friday, all of our guests today presented by Delaney's OK Tire in Langley. In business for over 20 plus years, OK Tire, Canadian owned and operated from coast to coast. That includes the Langley location, owned by Clayton and Brett Delaney, second generation owners. They handle all major tire brands and full mechanical services. Visit them at 19863 Fraser Highway in Langley. Happy to have back on the show for the second time, Rick, NHLPA Executive Director Marty Walsh. Marty, thanks for making time today. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad to be on today.
So you're coming up, I believe, if I have this right, February will mark 1 year on the job. What's the biggest thing so far, I know, as we head towards that 1 year mark that you've learned?
Well, right now I'm in the midst of a fall tour, so I get a chance to meet all the teams and meet all the players in the league. I had spent the first, really 6 months working in the office and touring around and meeting some players here and there and talking to a lot of the player reps, giving them calls and stuff like that, dealing with issues that pop up. Arizona being one of them, Columbus being another one, some other stuff. But the last couple of months, I've had the real opportunity to sit down with teams, with players, and introduce myself, talk about pertinent issues of the day, what we've been working on since I started, and kind of not really talking about 2026 and negotiations, but just building relationships with people. So that's been really interesting and fun. And the other piece of it is, which is kind of funny, is the press. Like you guys. Very similar to when I deal with when I was particularly as mayor of Boston. The hockey press, particularly in Canada, is incredible. I mean, really dives into issues. And growing up a hockey fan in Boston, we'd have occasional articles in the paper, and obviously with the Bruins and a lot of articles there. But hockey in Canada is certainly it's really amazing. It's a religion, so it's really amazing to understand it and just be connected with the game of hockey and all of the stories around it. Amazing.
When you meet with players, you say you're going through your fall tour, what's the number one thing they want to talk to you about that concerns them at the moment?
It changes. I mean, it changes from time to time. We most recently, we've been talking about protective equipment, the neck guards, and what happened with Adam Johnson, and what happened with his death, and talking about how do we make sure players are safe, depending on what the issue is around those times. People will ask questions about the collective bargaining agreement. They'll ask questions, not really, maybe some question about the salary cap next year. It really varies. It varies from topic to topic. We have an in-house professional development program called Unlimited, which is really thinking about post-career hockey career. A lot of the unions and a lot of the leagues are looking at players and helping them think about what's next for them. Some players, the older players, are interested in that. We do get into gambling and talk about, situations around gambling, what to be careful of as professional athletes. I said this before, professional athletes are treated very differently than the average person. So, the rules and regulations are a little different for professional athletes. We talk about that. I spent a lot of time talking about my backgrounds in organized labor and my different roles I held as a laborer, as president of my union, running the building trades, as labor secretary for the United States of America. And then I also talk about the uniqueness of being the mayor of Boston and how I can take what I've learned in business, being mayor, I learned in labor, and how do we move forward as a union and strengthen the game of hockey and grow the game of hockey, quite honestly. International hockey is also another important one. A lot of players interested in the Olympics, World Cup of Hockey, Global Series, things like that, asking lots of different questions about that and what the not what the end game is, but like how I view that we could really think about getting momentum by having Olympics in 2026, World Cup of Hockey 2028, Olympics in 30, World Cup of Hockey in 32, and how that can grow the game of hockey by having best on best tournaments where it's a predictable schedule that fans and players know that's there. So we're working on that stuff, but that's stuff that interests players as well and growing the game of hockey. And then you tie into that the Global Series this year. The NHL, we went to the NHL and the PA went to Australia, obviously, and then Sweden. I was in Sweden, saw 3 of the 4 games there. A lot of excitement in Stockholm about hockey there.
Marty, franchise value is going way up. And so players want the salary cap growth as well. COVID really hurt everybody. Let's be honest. But how much could you what would be a good number for you for the cap to go up this summer, Marty?
Well, right now it goes up. It goes up automatically. I think roughly $5 million will go up this year with the collective bargaining agreement. The debt from COVID should be paid off. The financial outlook looks pretty good for this season. There are a couple questions that need to be answered on certain deals that are kind of still in a different place. Like, for example, the Bally's the sports TV network deal and BIOS deal. So we have to see where that falls. But I mean, I think if we can get through the year with better than expectations, I think there's room for even higher salary cap. But it's still a little early to make that call right now. And that's something that I certainly would have a conversation with the commissioner at some point about if we think that the revenues exceed what the projections were.
Marty, I got to ask you about the Corey Perry situation. Is there a possibility you could grieve the termination of Perry in Chicago, Marty?
I mean, right now we're taking this day at a time. I mean, you saw Corey's statement yesterday, and we're just giving the player and the team and his family some time. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for discussion about that, and a little bit down the road here. Not too far, but a little bit down the road.
Okay, you talked about international team tournaments. There hasn't been one since the 2014 Olympics. You're talking about a tournament in February 2025, 4 teams, Canada, the U.S., Finland, and Sweden. Can you give us any more details on that, or is just about all we know right now?
Yeah, well, we're still working out some of the details, so that will hopefully be able to tell you and the players and everyone pretty soon. That's kind of just like a beginning, if you will, entree into what we hope will be the Olympics, and we hope will be a full best-on-best tournament in 28. We're looking at all this. There's a lot of moving pieces here. The IIHF has a World Championship schedule as well, so we want to be able to work with them. And we're looking at all NHL players in 2025. Some sort of hockey tournament or whatever we'll be calling it, series, whatever it is. I'm not sure what it's going to be called, but we've got to have a partner with IIHF as we think about Olympics and World Cup of Hockey moving forward, because we have lots of NHL players from different countries that those countries don't have enough players on it to field a full NHL team. So we will need some support from the IHF. So again, this is something. I think the most important piece here is that we have been working very well together, the NHL and the PA, and really thinking about coming up with something that people, fans and players, can say, wow, this is really something different here. They're laying down a foundation moving forward. The Olympics, 2020 Olympics, obviously COVID was in the middle of that. I'm not sure what happened before that, but 2020 Olympics was COVID. So, 2022.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens as we move forward here.
Okay, Marty, so the NHL bans Pride tape and warm-ups and also games, and then Arizona defenseman Travis Dermott became the first player to use it in a game. What are your thoughts on the banning of Pride tape, Marty?
I mean, I think looking back on the whole situation now, I mean, this all started right as I began. Actually, I think the first player said that he wasn't going to wear a jersey prior to me being elected by the executive board. I think looking back on this, I think that there's ways of preventing things like this from happening in the future. I think that this is just a series of unintended consequences that happen here. I think that the message that immediately was put out there was that NHL players are not pro LGBTQ community. That's not true. Teams aren't pro LGBTQ community. That's not true. And then when a memo came out about the tape, it wasn't just Pride tape; it was all tape. I think there was a lot of unintended consequences there. I think that we're on the right track. I think what we have to do now is learn from what was happening in the past and how do we move forward with that. I think that's key. The NHLPA, we just worked out a deal with You Can Play, and we sent some hoodies out to players with Pride colors. We did something for Hockey Fights Cancer as well, and I think that we're going to continue to make sure our game's inclusive. But listen, people have their reasons for not doing certain things. Not everyone's going to support every organization, every social cause, every cause in itself. So I think that we have to, understand that and learn from what happened.
Touched on it, but the death of Adam Johnson really touched a lot of people, not just in hockey, but the world. Where are you with neck guards? And Marty, do you think someday NHL players will all be forced to wear one?
Well, I don't know if it's forced, but I think that definitely, some players now are experimenting on the ice with different types of protective equipment. There's really right now to this point, there's not that I'm aware of this equipment that's fully protective of the neck area. We're having these conversations with the players. Obviously, a lot of the leagues, the young hockey leagues and minor leagues are putting these mandates in place. We certainly want to make sure that we're protecting our players. We want to make sure we're doing what we can. I've had some conversations with a couple companies about it. We're going to obviously have more conversations. In February, there's a meeting. It happens twice a year with the NHL and the PA and players talking about protection on the ice. It just happened that there is a meeting scheduled for All-Star. I guess is one every year. And this will be a topic of conversation there. And we are having conversation with players now about it. I think that, what this situation is, it's such a tragic situation. I think a lot of people are paying attention to what happened there. And it is a tragedy. It's awful. And I think that, as I said before, you don't always think of when I took the job before this, when I was the president of my local or ran the building trades in Boston, I'd always say you want them, or in there, when people go to work, you want to make sure they go home at the end of their shift. And there's no different than hockey. Hockey's a game, but for players, it's their job. And we want to make sure that they go home at the end of the shift when they play their game. And unfortunately, Adam didn't go home.
Marty, one last question for you. You mentioned you were in Sweden for the Global Series. We saw the preseason games in Australia. I know Austin Matthews, after the Global Series, said he'd like to see games in Mexico potentially one day. Is there a part of the globe you're looking at that maybe the NHL hasn't been to that they might want to get to at some point?
Well, I think one thing that, when you let's back up for a second. When we talk about Olympics and World Cup of Hockey, that allows us the opportunity for a world stage with major TV coverage in Canada and the United States, around the globe, to really show our sport on a bigger scale. And I think making sure that we're tying in global series and picking the places that we should be and what's really important about growing the game of hockey is important. I think obviously Mexico City potentially is one of those places. You think about, you have a lot of teams in the southern part in the United States that have large Latino populations, and you want to get people engaged in the sport of hockey. And there's no better way than bringing it to some home countries when we can. And I think that, laying a plan down and following that plan is going to be key. You've seen basketball do it to a degree, football do it to a degree, baseball a little bit. I think, hockey's been doing it for a while now, doing global series. And I think really coming up with a plan long-term for the growth of the game is important. And I think that, Austin's not wrong there. But I think you want to make sure that as you're doing these different series, global series, that you're doing the right marketing and sales and promoting the game. And I think that certainly that should be on the table.
Marty, really appreciate the time again on the show. We will have you back for sure. And thank you. Thanks for everything today.
Thanks, guys. If I don't see you, have a good Christmas season.
Thank you, Marty. Have a great one.